Later that night in Calvin's basement, we felt as if we had conquered the world. So enchanted were we with our victory, we celebrated with 2 glasses of Dago red wine. My father provided the purple murk. Calvin's father provided the Dago red. We immediately began planning our next adventure. We became connoisseurs of used automobiles. Some of my favorites included a 1951 two-tone Oldsmobile, a 43 Ford four-door, and even a 1945 Harley-Davidson motorcycle. I became so effective at opening the chain around the used car lot that I could do without a key. One of the mechanics showed me how to hit it just right with a hammer to achieve the same effect. One Thursday morning, over Twinkies and Pop, Calvin began another sales pitch. Have you ever driven a Volkswagen? I noticed one on your dad's lot. I'd noticed it too. Besides its rounded beetle shape and a casino crimson paint job, the small size made it stand out like a jockey dressed in full colors among NFL linebackers with sweatsuits. Calvin pointed out several of the Volkswagen's other outstanding features: a lighter body, a rear engine, a floor-mounted 4-speed transmission, plus the most intriguing feature, I had never driven one before. You're right, Calvin, I've never driven a Volkswagen, but that's about to change. And so was the luck of our joyriding era. Saturday night found me again home alone. I came at the end of my parents' childbearing years. By age 14, they must have considered me raised. I spent many weekends and weekdays home alone. The female companions we picked for the Volkswagen experience were more daring than those we had taken to the dance. The Volkswagen girls knew they were participating in a crime and showed up because of it. Calvin sat in the back seat with Charmaine while I drove in the front seat next to Pauline. Our destination was Kenilworth, a small coal mining town about 30 miles to the northwest. As we drove towards our destination, a flimsy guardrail was all that separated us from the depths of Kenilworth Canyon. The trip up the canyon went without incident. I tried to play race car driver with my bug, but the uphill grade kept my speed under 35 miles per hour. The return trip was a very different story. Pauline and Charmaine had a quest for adventure. Both of them wanted to drive. Please let me drive. You've got to let me drive. If you don't let me drive, I will never like you again. Please, my brother lets me drive all the time, said Pauline. Well, okay, I said. If you've driven your brother's car, then I guess it'll be okay. I stopped the VW, opened the door, and ran around the front to the passenger side as Pauline jumped the hump and took control. Pauline ground the 4-speed into first gear. As she let out the clutch, the Beetle took 6 lurches forward before the downhill grade provided enough momentum to keep the engine from stalling. We achieved a Guinness Book of World Records for RPMs in low. I had to help her get it to the next gear. But somewhere between second and high, she achieved a constant neutral. We soon learned that Volkswagens go faster downhill in no gear than they go uphill in any gear. The post holding up the guardrail became a constant blur. The dotted center line was like a solid stripe. Calvin went comatose in the back seat. For the first time in my 2-month crime spree, I was beginning to feel mortal. Pauline and Charmaine were still acting invincible. Both girls were grinning from ear to ear and screaming, "Yay! Yay!" Pauline mocked me as if possessed by an evil desire to scare us to death. My brother doesn't even have a car. I could see she was a far better liar than she was a driver. She wouldn't stop even when I said, "Please, please." She wouldn't stop when I demanded. Finally, I reached over, turned off the key, and removed it from the ignition. The Kenilworth Canyon possessed one saddle, and for some reason, God and the Utah Highway Department put it right where we needed it. That Volkswagen rolled down into the saddle as fast as it could go without engine power. It passed through the hollow of the bottom and began to lose speed as it ascended the other side. As the forward momentum gave out, the car rolled backward into the hollow of the saddle again, and we yo-yoed back and forth through that saddle until the Volkswagen rolled to a speed slow enough for me to jump out of the car. As I vacated the bug, I left the passenger door wide open. I rounded the front of the car and was about to face Pauline through the driver's window when the front tire rolled over my foot. During the confusion, Charmaine leaned up over the back seat to close my door. When I started to scream that I'd been killed, Pauline slammed on the brakes. Charmaine's head hit the windshield with force. Her head was harder than the glass, which gave way, producing long spider web lines in all directions around the point of impact. With me moaning on the ground, Charmaine holding her head in the back seat, and Calvin still in a death trance, Pauline decided she had all the fun she could stand and relinquished the driver's seat. Built in with my creative imagination was a high anxiety level. In years since that adventure, I've learned to measure anxiety on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 is no anxiety. 10 is high as you can go. At that point, my anxiety was at 12. I was not worried about a broken toe or Charmaine having a concussion. We could always come up with stories to cover for those facts. Kids did that all the time. The hard part was figuring out a way to explain a broken windshield in a car that I had stolen from my father's used car lot. The image of facing my father was sheer terror. My anxiety rendered me less capable of driving than Pauline had been, even with her obvious lack of experience. I took over anyway. All I could think of was escape. Get the car back, get the car back, get the car back. That's all my imagination would give me. Within 2 minutes, the Volkswagen had regained its original speed. I was oblivious to the speedometer until we passed the sign reading caution, sharp curve, speed 25 miles per hour. I noticed we were going about 54 as the heavy end, the end with the engine, passed us going 55. We traveled backwards several yards until the front end came around again, and we achieved 3 perfect 360 degrees turns. The Ford came to rest, traversing the highway, the headlights pointing out over the edge of Kenilworth Canyon, and me with 2 fists full of white knuckles. By some miracle, the only damage was a black toenail on me, a bump on Charlene's head, and a cracked windshield on the Volkswagen. The view into Kenilworth Canyon took away my addiction for excitement. Something about having my life flash before me took away the desire to drive fast for the rest of the night. I slowly backed the VW around and headed downhill. I didn't take it out of first gear until we reached level ground. I slowly backed the Volkswagen around. The girls asked to be dropped off on Main Street. They informed us that they would prefer a company of others in the future. Calvin and I replaced the Volkswagen in the used car row as closely as possible to the way we had found it. But there was one obvious blemish we could not conceal. I tried to walk away, but that casino red Volkswagen screamed silently at me. You thief, liar, murderer, you will pay for your crimes, you will rot in hell. My imagination was going wild. To silence that scream, I picked up a large rock and threw it right through the spider web crack. Then we ran like bandits into the night. When my parents returned home that night, they found me in bed, intensely feigning sleep. The next morning, which was Sunday, my father returned from his early morning inspection of his business. I tried to not show any visible signs of distress when I heard him say, I had a deal going on a little red Volkswagen, but the buyer backed out because some damn kid put a rock right through the front windshield. Parents ought to pay more attention to their kids. Helen, I don't know what the world's coming to.